Hare Krishna. We continue reading from Teachings of Queen Kunti. We are on prayer number 20. And this prayer is named Full Surrender. It's from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text 37. Api adhyanastam svakrite hita prabho jehasasi switsurido anuji vinaha yesham na chanyad bhavata padambujat parayanam rajasu yojitam hasam. O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today, though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us, now when all the kings are at enmity with us? So these prayers of Kunti Maharani are when Lord Krishna was leaving them. The Pandavas had won the Kurukshetra war. Yudhishthir was the emperor. They were at Hastinapur. And now Lord Krishna said, okay, I need to go back to Dwarka. That's when Kunti Maharani says this prayer. So she's like, you're leaving us today. We are completely dependent on you. There's no one else to protect you. You know, all these kings are at enmity with us. Now we just had a great war. And you are our only protector. We can see her mood. We can try to understand, you know, who are we dependent on? Who do we think is our protector? You know, some of us might think, oh, it's my family, my strength, my intelligence, my knowledge, or my, whatever, XYZ. Each of us might have our own things that we think we are dependent on, but actually each and every one of us is only completely dependent on Krishna, completely dependent on Krishna. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman. It's just that we don't want to understand it. We don't want to accept it. But the more we understand God's position, the more we understand God's position, we will understand how dependent we are on God. That we will understand that, oh, I'm not God, but I am an eternal part and parcel of God. The Pandavas are most fortunate. So we are reading from the purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Pandavas are most fortunate because with all good luck, they were entirely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. In the material world, to be dependent on the mercy of someone else is the utmost sign of misfortune. But in the case of our transcendental relation with the Lord, it is the most fortunate case when we can live completely dependent on Him. So in material world, we say, no, I need to be independent. Why should I be dependent on anyone else? Means I am at their mercy. Means if they don't like at any point of time, they can be mean to me, they can manipulate me, they can throw me out because I'm depending on their mercy. But that's the material world. We have to understand the material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. But once we realize our transcendental relation with God and realize that how we are completely dependent on Him, then we are the most fortunate. The material disease is due to thinking of becoming independent of everything. But the cruel material nature does not allow us to become independent. The false attempt to become independent of the stringent laws of nature is known as material advancement of experimental knowledge. Now, the reason we are here in the material world is because we want to be independent of God. We start thinking, I don't want to be dependent on God. I want to be independent. Immediately, as soon as this desire comes in us, we come here in this material world. We have a material body and we are bound by the laws of material nature. It's like if, you know, we are going to travel to different countries soon. And so then whichever country we go to, we are bound by the laws of that country. Isn't it? Each particular country has its own laws and rules and regulations. And if we don't follow it, we will be penalized. So we have to follow the law. Similarly, now, because of our desire to be independent of God, we are put inside this material nature. And then we are saying, no, no, I'm independent. I'm independent. But we are not. We are not. We are completely dependent. Completely dependent. Even we say, oh, I'm independent. Well, I'm independent. I can travel anywhere I like. Yeah, I can travel anywhere I like, but I'm so dependent on someone to arrange my travel from one place to another. Then when I go there, I'm not independent. I have to follow the rules of the country. So we are always having this phantasmagoria, this fantasy, this fantasy that I'm independent, instead of understanding how we are in fact dependent on God. So the whole material world is moving on this false attempt at becoming independent of the laws of nature, beginning from Ravan, who wanted to prepare a direct staircase to the planets of heaven, down to the present age. They are trying to overcome the laws of nature. Yeah, Ravan wanted to do that. He said, I will make a staircase to go up to the heavens. Who will stop me? Who can stop me? But God can stop him. Lord Ramachandra killed him. So now, even in modern world, we are trying to do that. We are trying to play around with nature. We are trying to do so many different inventions, trying to go against the laws of nature. But she retaliates. We can see the pandemic was one big, strong evidence for that. When we are trying to play with nature, how much, after all, is she going to bear, you know? How much of the nonsense can a mother bear? That one time she says, enough. And that we have been having this pandemic. It's so evident. They are trying now to approach distant planetary systems by electronic mechanical power. But the highest goal of human civilization is to work hard under the guidance of the Lord and become completely dependent on him. So we are using so much of our time and energy going to different planets. We are, you know, as human society, we can see how the collective energy, collective resources, how are they being utilized? They utilize only all of it is being utilized: eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Whereas our resources and our energy should be utilized to understand God, and become completely dependent on him, because that is our original nature. The highest achievement of perfect civilization is to work with valor, but at the same time depend completely on the Lord. So it's not that we sleep, oh, I'm completely dependent on God, so I don't need to do anything. No, Krishna told Arjuna, you fight the war. You leave the result to me, but you fight. Similarly, we have to do whatever we need to do, but at the same time, depend completely on the Lord. We do not have the capability to change the, what do we say, result. But then we'll say, oh, then you're being fatalistic. No, the idea is not to be fatalistic. We can change our destiny. Yes, destiny is in our hands. It is in our hands. But the idea is to understand what is it that we can change. Staying here in the material world is not really changing the destiny. It's still going to continue to stay here in the material world. The idea is to go back home, back to Godhead. The Pandavas were the ideal executors of this standard of civilization. Undoubtedly, they were completely dependent on the goodwill of Lord Sri Krishna, but they were not idle parasites of the Lord. They were all highly qualified, both by personal character and by physical activities. Still, they always looked for the mercy of the Lord, because they knew that every living being is dependent by constitutional position. So the Pandavas, highly qualified personalities, great warriors, very learned, very ideal in character. That's the reason Krishna wanted them to become emperors. So they were not parasites. Oh, anyway, I'm dependent on God, whatever God's mercy. No, they did their duty with full determination. At the same time, they were completely dependent on God, completely, because they understand that each and every living entity is completely dependent on God. And that is the constitutional position of every living entity. The perfection of life is therefore to become dependent on the will of the Lord instead of becoming falsely independent in the material world. So we say, oh, things should go according to my, everything should go according to what I want. Now imagine, there's 7 billion only human beings, then there are so many other species. And if everything was going on according to everyone's will, how much chaos would there be? Because we don't know how to think about the welfare of everyone else. We may know how to think about our welfare, or maybe people who are connected to us in a family or a community or a society or even a country or even a planet. But what about all the living entities? So each and every one of us is completely dependent on the will of the Lord. That's why they say not even a blade of grass can move without the will of the Lord. And we just have to realize it. That is the process. That is the point that we need to come to. But then one will say, oh, you mean I have to work so hard to just understand I'm completely dependent on the will of the Lord? But that's the truth. This is the truth we have to understand. And because we don't want to understand the truth, because we falsely declare ourselves independent, and then we continue to live here in the material world. So, but we may say, oh, but I'm dependent on God only when I'm in this material body. Once I get liberated, then I'm not dependent on God. This is the point we need to understand. No, whether we are in the material world or whether we are already liberated, we are completely dependent on the Supreme Lord. That's the point we need to understand. And that is true liberation. That is true liberation. Then that means we are able to understand our correct position, our constitutional position. So perfection of life, that is the perfection of life, completely dependent on the will of the Lord. Okay, so then those who try to become falsely independent of the Lord are called anath, or without any guardian, whereas those who are completely dependent on the will of the Lord are called sanath, or those having someone to protect them. Therefore, we must try to be sanath so that we can always be protected from the unfavorable condition of material existence. So what is unfavorable? This, being in this material world, that is unfavorable. Srila Prabhupada would say, in the material world, good or bad, everything is bad. Why? Because you shouldn't be here in the material world. We shouldn't be here in the material world. And therefore, we must try to become sanath. Sanath. That have God's protection on us. We should not try to become anath. That will keep us here longer in this material world. By the deluding power of the external material nature, we forget that the material condition of life is the most undesirable perplexity. This Maya Devi, she's very strong, material energy, she's very strong. She's completely made us forget who we truly are. We have completely forgotten our original position, and like crazy, like mad people, we are, attracted to this material world. We have forgotten who we are, and we have forgotten that to be in this material condition is most unfortunate, most undesirable. The Bhagavad Gita 7.19 therefore directs us that after many, many births, one fortunate person becomes aware of the fact that Vasudev Krishna is all in all, and that the best way of leading one's life is to surrender unto him completely. That is the sign of a Mahatma. So Krishna says 7.19 Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavanmam Prapadyante Vasudeva Sarvam Iti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. After many, many births, one will understand, oh, I'm not God. I'm trying uselessly this endeavor to become God. Birth after birth, life after life. Oh, I'm not God. Oh, Krishna is God. Oh, I need to surrender unto him. And Krishna is saying, this is a sign of a Mahatma. But such a personality is very, very rare. Very, very rare. So all the members of the Pandava family were Mahatmas in household life. Maharaj Yudhishthir was the head of these Mahatmas, and Queen Kunti Devi was the mother. The lessons of the Bhagavad Gita and all the Puranas, specifically the Bhagavad Purana, are therefore inevitably connected with the history of the Pandava Mahatmas. For them, separation from the Lord was just like the separation of a fish from water. So Yudhishthir Maharaj, the Pandavas, they are ideal Mahatmas. They were completely in samarth with the will of the Lord, completely dependent on the will of the Lord, completely. And so now the Lord was leaving, and so they were like, oh my God, they were suffering. You bring a fish out of water, the fish suffers like anything. Srimati Kunti Devi therefore felt such separation like a thunderbolt. And the whole prayer of the queen is to try to persuade the Lord to stay with them. After the battle of Kurukshetra, although the inimical kings were killed, their sons and grandsons were still there to deal with the Pandavas. It is not only the Pandavas who are put into the condition of enmity. All of us are always in such a condition. And the best way of living is to become completely dependent on the will of the Lord and thereby overcome all difficulties of material existence. So Kunti Maharani is saying, okay, the kings who are at enmity with us, okay, they were killed in Kurukshetra, but their sons and grandsons are there, they will still want to come after us. And so Prabhupada is saying that not only the Pandavas, we are always in this material existence where people are trying to get to us in this condition of enmity. But the best way of living is completely dependent on the will of the Lord. Completely accept the will of the Lord. And in this way, overcome all the difficulties of material existence. So this is the point we need to come to. Dependent on God. Understanding actually how dependent we are on God. Understanding that, oh, I am actually not independent of God. I'm dependent on God's will. So the more we hear and chant, that's the way that we can understand our actual position, understand the truth. That's the way we can understand the truth. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Did you want to add anything or comment?
No, it was just like that. It's like Rakhe Krishna, Mare Krishna Rakhe ke. It's simply that, right? That we need to trust Krishna for everything, no matter what.
That's right. That's right. Rakhe Krishna, Mare Krishna, Rakhe ke. Yeah.
Like we have to see good.
Yes. We are completely dependent on the will of the Lord.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that God's will is the most benevolent will. Yeah. We have to understand that Krishna's will, God's will, is the most benevolent because he is the supreme father of everyone. So he's never going to do anything bad for anyone. So his will is the most benevolent. Once we try to understand that he can never do bad for anyone, then gradually we will be more and more willing to accept his will. Accept his will.
Do you know there's a story of that farmer and a son of his? They both And then the farmer's son, he got injured. And then the father said that whatever is Krishna's will, it is good. So I just trust. And then after some time, there was a war declared in the country. And then they said that all the young men who are 19 and above, they need to come and fight. But then the boy was saved because he was injured, his leg was injured. So yes, and then at that time, the father said it's all Krishna's will, whatever. So yes, sometimes we see that this is a sad moment for us, or we are in a misery, but we don't know that that misery is a blessing for us in disguise. We don't know, because that is from Krishna. So that cannot be misery. Actually, we as a material world person assumes it as a misery, but it is not misery, because it is Krishna's will. So Krishna's will can never be a misery. It has to be a blessing always. So we need to just trust that Krishna can never do wrong for us. And I think that is the point. That was the point of that story.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yes, thank you. Thank you for wrapping it up so nicely. We'll stop here then. Kunti Maharani ki jai, Shila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhaktavind ki jai. Hare Krishna, Hari Bol.